All right, welcome back to another week of Niche Pursuits News. My name is Jared Bauman. I'm your host today, along with Thomas Smith. And we've got a couple of different heavy-hitting topics to dive into, starting with a new, I'll say very detailed study on AI search engines and which ones cite content more frequently than others. It's a really detailed study. So a lot of other things in there. We'll look into all the nuances and most importantly, talk about how they apply to bloggers and online entrepreneurs. Also, another company is suing Google over AI-generated answers in its search engines. We'll weigh in on that. And I've got a bit of a unique story to feature here. It comes from an in-person event I attended last night. I've got some really interesting data and insights that came out of it as it relates to deal flow, online business sales, what's trending. So we'll talk about that. I'll share some of those insights. Second half of the podcast, we'll talk side hustles. Today is more of an update on those current projects I see, Thomas. No new ones to announce today. Of course, we'll bring it home with weird niches. Speaking of bringing it home, I was out on vacation last week. I'm back home now, Thomas. You and Spencer, you guys did a great job.
We had a great time. It was fun. Definitely missed having you here, but I know you were off on a beach relaxing. I wore my shark shirt today for people who are on the video to celebrate the fact that you were out there in tropical paradise.
Got a little bit of a tan, just long enough to settle in and feel like I should stay around longer, and then I had to come home. It was a good trip. Good to be back, though. Excited to talk about the news today. So, yeah, I kind of teased it at the outset. Let's go ahead and dive into our first story here, and it is on this AI search optimization study. So this is a study that was done, I'll get to that here in a second. It's somewhere down here. Here it is, xfunnel.ai. Never heard of those guys, by the way, but it's a study that I really liked a lot. And so we'll get into some of these things. First off, this study looked at 40,000 responses containing 250,000 citations. The researchers submitted questions onto different AI search platforms, and they did it across different buyer journey stages. So I'll get to that in a little bit. I thought that was interesting as well. When I say this study had nuance, that's what I mean. There's a lot more to it than just a headline. Anyways, in those 250,000 citations, they found that Perplexity had 6.61 citations per response. So again, that means, hey, here's your answer to your question, and I'm going to cite 6.61 websites or resources. Google Gemini, 6.1, so only slightly lower. And then ChatGPT, a shockingly low in comparison, 2.62. They noted that this was tested for ChatGPT in standard mode, not with explicitly activated search features, could explain some of its lower citation count. I do agree. They found that across all platform, earned content represents the largest percentage of citations, with UGC content showing increased representation. I thought this was interesting. I'll just kind of highlight one line in this article. Affiliate sites and independent blogs hold weight in AI-generated responses as well. A couple more things that I teased, but from that high level, that's kind of what the article's big headline is Perplexity and Gemini are citing websites and UGC far more than ChatGPT is.
Yeah, I think to me, the biggest thing I take away from it is the piece about earned content. And I think from this, we're looking at not just links, not just explicit links, but it seems like anywhere that your brand or your website gets mentioned, that's something where these models are learning from that, who you are and what you do, and when they're going to include that in their responses. And they seem to trust, I mean, again, we can get into how it changes as you move down the funnel, but it seems like they seem to trust these third-party references a lot more. And to me, this is a story really about how you kind of have to do the right thing for your site and your brand, not necessarily knowing what the payoff is going to be. And I think about all the work that a lot of us did with things like Harrow, which is kind of no longer in existence, but, you know, and pitching media and trying to get these brand mentions, and you do all this work. And at the end of the day, the article would come out and the journalist would be so proud and would send it to you, and you'd go and look and it was a no follow link. You go, I didn't get any value out of that. Well, it turns out, you know, fast forward a couple of years and you probably did get a ton of value out of that, because now, who knew AI search was going to be a thing? Now that it is, it's apparently looking at those kinds of unlinked brand mentions to learn about who you are and what you do and citing them to potential new leads. So to me, it's really a story about those kinds of coverages that we all went for, and maybe a lot of people eased off once we saw that they were getting kind of mostly no follow links and that kind of stuff. That still has a ton of value. And it really, I think, is a case for things like digital PR, for being on a bunch of social channels, starting conversations in places like Reddit and other UGC sites, just getting your brand name out there. There's actually tangible benefits to that now. It's not sort of this wishy-washy thing where, oh, mentions are good. Maybe there's branded traffic as a ranking factor in Google. We don't know. Literally, we're seeing here that these AI chatbots learn about you from these third-party mentions, and then they mention you as an authority on a particular topic more often when these third-party sites talk about you.
And UGC. I mean, yeah. we've known for a while that the no follow conversation, the getting mentioned online, it's part of what's considered more of a greater entity stacking. And as a brand, that's been something that people have understood moves the needle long term. UGC though, and how it plays into it, like that's such a new thing, right? And UGC citations, whether it's forums, whether it's review sites, also are increasingly important to have your brand mentioned in, and this data is showing that. Let's talk about the customer journey. I tease that. The data shows differences in citation patterns based on query types. So during the problem exploration and education stages, I would call this kind of, that top of the funnel search query, there is higher percentage of citations from third-party editorial content. That would be like our websites, that a lot of us are content websites and that sort of thing. UGC citation from review sites and forums increase in the comparison stages. I would call that the middle of the funnel, right? That's when comparison is typically happening, is middle of the funnel. And then in the final research and evaluation phase, or bottom of the funnel, citations tend to come directly from brand websites and competitors. Now, I didn't see them share specific data around this. This is the roll-up in the article. But that is also really, really fascinating as well, especially if you're in the marketing business like I am as an agency, thinking through there's nuance to this. Like, it's not just about, you get mentioned more if you're this, or you get mentioned more on Perplexity than you do on. It's really about like understanding where you're going to get mentioned in the buyer cycle, in the buyer funnel, and then leveraging that data to plan ahead.
I think of this like if you were trying to buy a toaster, right? To use a consistent example here, when you're kind of just dipping your toe in the water, you're going to search for things like, what's the best toaster? What should I look for? Or toaster oven versus conventional toaster. And that's that top of the funnel. And that's where it seems to be going to the UGC sites and editorial. Once you've honed in on a brand and it's like, okay, I want a Cuisinart combo air fryer toaster, I'm going to start then seeing more stuff that comes from Cuisinart, because I'm going to be asking features, what wattage is it? How big is it? What materials? That kind of thing. And that it's turning to the brands. So yes, if you're trying to push your own brand, then definitely answering specific, explicit questions about your products on your own domain is probably a really good move, because that seems to be where the chatbots are turning for these kind of lower in the funnel steps. And then focusing on getting included in roundups and general information articles, that kind of stuff seems to be really significant on the editorial side. For a site owner, I think it's kind of a similar picture. If you want to get cited in these kinds of write-ups from these tools more often, or responses from these tools, it seems like the place to target is that top of the funnel, where buyers are just trying to learn the basics. And I think that's a little bit different than where we would have gone with a traditional affiliate site, where you'd really hone in on one product and detailed review of the Cuisinart TOA 85 or whatever it is, toaster, and that would be your focus. Now I think it's more of these roundups, general questions. That's where we're likely to get citations, and they're really going to turn to the brands themselves for that bottom of the funnel.
We joke about you being the toaster guy, but you either are a really good actor or you do know a thing or two about toasters, as exemplified right there.
I have leaned into the toaster niche recently. I've been learning my stuff. I've got a whole suite of toaster reviews lined up. I think I have 5 toasters I've reviewed for the channel that I haven't published yet. So yes, there will be an update on Toaster Guy forthcoming, but in the meanwhile, I can at least use it for some examples.
Well, it's coming in handy here. One final thing on this, and then we've got some other topics to get into, but I thought it was also interesting they highlighted in the article, platform-specific UGC preferences. So each AI search engine shows preferences for different UGC sources. Again, talking about like, hey, let's think through strategically what we're doing, where we're going. We're starting to get data that can actually help us with that. Perplexity favors YouTube and PeerSpot. Google Gemini frequently cites Medium, Reddit, and YouTube. Reddit makes sense. YouTube makes sense. Duh. ChatGPT often references LinkedIn, G2, and Gartner peer reviews. God, that's fascinating.
Makes me think they must have a deal. I mean, Gartner peer reviews. Like, I'm thinking no one goes, I know, I want to buy a new lawn chair. I'm going to go to Gartner peer reviews. So it makes me think maybe they have a data deal there. The one that comes up consistently, though, is YouTube. And we talked about that a little bit in previous episodes, that's really where a lot of this traffic is going. And we saw that Google pivoted their AI overviews towards YouTube dramatically. And Spencer and I talked about that last time. So again, I feel like YouTube is the place to be if you're creating content in this space. I have no idea how one gets into Gartner peer reviews. Reddit, I think is certainly a potential target, but the one where you have some influence feels like YouTube is really at the top there.
Yeah, LinkedIn's long been associated with the business community, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting that ChatGPT has leaned into that, has leaned in, potentially pretty heavily into citing business sources. So there's a lot of different things there that are interesting. Let's move along. It's a good topic, fun article. We'll link to it if you want to go look at it and kind of explore more. Maybe look at it from your niche specifically or from your angle in business specifically. But we got to get into a lawsuit. I mean, this would not be a podcast if on search engine topics if we didn't talk about Google consistently this week. What are they in the news for? Well, they're getting sued, and it's by Chegg. So here's the story up in front of us. Chegg sues Google for hurting traffic with AI as it considers strategic alternatives. It is a long doc, and I'm sorry, I'm clearing my throat here. It is a long doc, a long PDF. I downloaded the full PDF. I think it was 67 pages. I'll just give you a high level on it. And then Thomas will kind of noodle into some of the specifics here. I know you have some thoughts on it. But the core of this complaint, it centers around Google's alleged abuse of its monopoly in general search services to coerce online publishers like Chegg into supplying content that Google then uses to create AI-generated answers. Hey, we've been raising our hand about this topic for several years now. These answers, these AI-generated answers, including AI overviews and featured snippets, which, by the way, have been around for a long time, they're displayed directly on Google's search engine results page, often replacing the need for a user to visit the original content provider's site. If you're thinking this sounds basic, remember they have to, file about this stuff. This is a national story, so it's gotten far past our little industry. They're claiming that Google forces publishers to provide their content for free in exchange for inclusion in Google's search index, effectively reducing traffic to the publisher's website and harming their revenue. Yep, I know all about that. The complaint alleges that Google's actions are anti-competitive, they violate antitrust laws, and they result in Google profiting from content it did not pay for. In many ways, this does sound like piggybacking, as we surmised would happen off of the antitrust lawsuit judgment, right? So their lawsuit, Chegg's lawsuit, also emphasizes the detrimental effect on their educational content, which it argues is vital for students, and that Google's actions threaten the equality and availability of trustworthy online information. So again, it's long. I didn't have a chance to read through the whole PDF because it's kind of, lawyer-esque and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, you and I were going back and forth on this in the build-up to today's recording. Thomas, what are some of the things that stood out about this one to you?
I think this one is different from some of the other AI-related lawsuits, and I'll say why. But just to give people the very basics here, if you haven't used Chegg before, they're basically a homework help type of site at this point. They do other stuff. They do textbooks and things like that. But a lot of what they do is homework help. So students who need help answering their physics homework or whatever would turn to that. And before, it was a lot of human tutors. It was a lot of kind of well-written articles about, how do you solve this equation, et cetera. Well, AI has really eaten into their market share on that. People are using ChatGPT, they're using Google to answer these kinds of questions instead. And so Chegg has really gotten hammered. They're one of the first companies that's sort of fallen victim to the things that have happened in AI. And I think now they are turning to Google and basically blaming Google for a lot of what has happened with this. And the allegation anyway is, well, we put in all this effort to publish this content, and we give the answer somewhere in the article that the student is looking for, but they kind of read through our article and understand the process and what questions they should ask, et cetera, et cetera. And Google's just grabbing the answer and putting it up at the front. And then the student's just going to basically take that and throw it in their their homework and not learn anything and walk away. We don't get the view. And they're claiming it's worse for the student because they didn't get this well-written professional sort of article walking them through how do you show your work and solve the problem. So that's basically what's going on. I think it's very different from the other AI lawsuits out there, though, because this one doesn't focus on copyright.
Bingo.
So the other ones are all about copyright. It's like,
Bingo.
you stole my stuff, I own my stuff, you trained on it, and you weren't allowed to do that. And that's still an open question. We don't know. The courts haven't answered that question yet. It might be that they'll say that's true, but they might also not. And there's a whole thing in copyright that gets super complex around fair use, all this kind of stuff. This one is different, though. They're not going the copyright route. They're going the antitrust route. And again, I'm not a lawyer, so take it with a grain of salt. But from my understanding, that basically means they're saying Google is hurting the competitive landscape by doing this. Not even they took our content, but because they own the search engine and they're putting this stuff out there in the search engine and they have this huge market share in that space, then they're basically crushing the publishers creating the content. And because of the fact that they own the search engine, they can push this stuff out to a much broader audience than, Perplexity or a ChatGPT, where, yes, they're training on the data, but they don't have this huge platform to just drop it into. So this is super fascinating because if they get some leverage and traction on this particular angle, that would open up a bunch of other whole can of worms, really, where everybody who feels that they created content and the AI overviews took it and showed it, and by nature of Google being a search engine, having this massive platform, they were able to profit more than the competition. They could potentially come forward with some kind of claim too. So I think there's a lot more kind of implications to this. It's a really interesting tactic, and it could have some pretty powerful knock-on effects, I think.
So you highlighted the difference between copyright and antitrust. And it's interesting because I'm also not a lawyer.
Yeah.
I like to make this clear, folks, for a number of reasons. But it's interesting that this centers, in my opinion, more around what I thought the antitrust lawsuit from the DOJ would center around. Mm-hmm. And what we kind of found was that there were a lot of things the DOJ could go after, but what it seems like the judgment really came down to is more on the ads and the ads department relationship with search, right? The anti-competitive ways that they got Chrome into browsers and phones and devices and these sorts of things. This is more what I thought and was hoping the DOJ antitrust lawsuit would go down. Hey, this is monopolistic and we're stuck. The whole world might be kind of stuck following the nuances of a single entity. That's what they're going after. And like you said, I don't know anything. I mean, they're citing, I can read it here. They're citing the Sherman Act of 1890. So I didn't look into that, folks. If you want to go deep dive that and talk about that in the comments, please feel free to. But it's fascinating. It's not about copyright. That still has to be decided on. This is about monopolistic practices.
It's basically saying because you are Google, you can't do this. Not that you can't, that nobody can do this. I mean, if somebody else went and summarized something from Chegg, even if that somebody was a huge company like OpenAI with ChatGPT,
I want to talk about that.
That wouldn't necessarily put them in hot water. But it's saying because you're Google and because you have a massive platform, you can't use that to basically crush the smaller guy, in this case, Chegg. I think there's some challenges. They really started their decline before AI overviews became a thing. I'm sure they face competition from other places. Google could always say, hey, you could just opt out. No one's forcing you to get Google traffic. So I think that I don't know where it'll go, but it's a really interesting argument because it's something, like you said, a lot of us have felt in the industry too, that we put this content out and Google shows it in an AI overview. And if no one clicks through, well, what's our incentive to keep making it?
Well, and to your point, so let me read this. I had this highlighted. So despite the suit, Chegg has its own AI strategy. To your point, it's not necessarily AI as much as it's like Google. It has drawn on Meta's open source Llama, as well as models from privately held Anthropic and Mistral. Schultz said, who's Schultz? I don't know who Schultz is. Someone with the company. Chegg has also partnered with OpenAI, to your point, which the education company views as a competitor alongside Google. Interesting. The company reported that 3.6 million students had subscriptions in the fourth quarter, down, this is staggering, down 21%. Wow. Subscriptions include access to AI-powered learning assistant. Anyways, so it's a bit of a it's just an interesting situation, right? Like they're involved in AI and they're utilizing AI, but they don't like AI overviews and they're suing over that. And so, it's a bit complicated if you're a bit confused at this point. There's a lot going on here.
I think for us in this industry, the end thing here we want to look at is how does this proceed? What do the courts think of AI overviews? And this is something that could end up with AI overviews probably not being eliminated, but maybe turned down for certain informational and educational queries. And if that were to be the case, that could potentially surface more of our content if we're in those spaces. It could totally backfire, though, and Google could just go, okay, well, you don't want us showing other people's content. Great, we'll show more YouTube content. We'll show more stuff we own. We'll basically just leave the blogs and the other sites out entirely. So I don't know that it's always going to be good for us, but that's what we want to be looking at is this industry. Because, it's a little theoretical, high level. But if this proceeds, it could mean some queries show fewer AI overviews, and that could be good or bad for us. We want to see what replaces them, basically.
Yeah. It's and we won't know for a long time. These things, they take forever. They take forever. Okay. Interesting though. I know that was a story that when I saw it, I'm like, we've got to talk about that one on the podcast. All right. What's our third story here?
You had some data from your event last night, but you shared with me a little bit offline.
Yep, I have it here, and it started auto-playing an ad there, so I just closed it out, and I apologize. The third story. So the reason why I'm looking and searching for it is because it's a story of my own, if you will. So I was messaging you last night, Thomas. I went to an event last night, and this event was hosted by Flippa and by Ezoic. So it was here in San Diego. I got invited to it. I went downtown, and it was an event that Flippa and Ezoic put on, just kind of a networking event. And they shared some data, meet and greet with other people who are buying or selling businesses. Obviously Flippa is in the buying and selling of business space. So they were kind of the primary company that put it on. Flippa, Steph from Flippa gave a presentation. Gavin from Ezoic gave a presentation. They reached about 10, 15 minutes long. Some really cool insights I thought shared in each of them. And I want to bring some of them up here and highlight them. So let's see. The first and biggest thing that Flippa shared, and I want to talk about this because this is heavily interesting to people listening to this podcast. They are sharing that deal volume is up, that the volume of deals and transactions that are happening is up across the board. And then they broke it out into categories. And this is where I thought it was really fascinating. I would have loved to have just stopped there and done an open forum and talked about it. But that's what we get to do here. So let's see. Deal volume is up. App sales up 9%. E-commerce up 15%. SaaS up 21%. And now it's going to really take off here. Agencies up 46%. That's interesting for me, of course. And then Thomas, to your point, the drum you've been banging on for so long now, YouTube channel sales up 170%, according to the data that Flippa has. And they are, I believe, the number one broker for this type of business online.
It really highlights to me, if you want to build an asset to sell it, it's not a niche site anymore. It is a YouTube channel. And that's really interesting because Flippa, I think I'm on one of their email newsletters that I've been on for about 20 years now or something like that. I have been on that since at least the early 2000s, and they've been around a while. And they were traditionally a place you bought and sold websites. And so the fact that now they're basically the place to sell a YouTube channel and that has gone up, almost 200%, that is huge. And that to me says, if you can build a YouTube channel and you can get it, I don't know what the criteria are, what buyers are looking for. I'd love to delve into that a bit more. But if you can build a good YouTube channel, you can create an asset that has a ton of value and there's a really strong market for it.
I didn't hear anything about like multiples and, which I would have loved to seen that data broken out in terms of multiples and what multiples are in each of those spaces, but I mean, who would have thought, like, I don't know, 5 years ago, I probably wasn't thinking, hey, I can build a YouTube channel and sell it. And also to the point on agencies, like a lot of people here we've talked about have a lot of skills that they have built up in running niche sites, in running social media accounts. And these are skills that can be offered even on a small scale basis to clients, to other people who don't have that, and you can have almost a small agency at that point. To some degree, that's a bit how I started, not from running niche sites, but from running other businesses and marketing those businesses. And that's what translated into an agency for me. It's good and healthy and encouraging just to see deal volume up across the board. I have to admit that in many ways, I would imagine, I have a lot of reason to imagine that deal volume could be down. It's great to see that it's up. Very encouraging for people who are out there building, that deal volume is up. People are still buying, etc. Let's see. The second thing, there were a lot of different slides that I could have highlighted, but let me see if I can pull up I'm not going to pull it up because, I got to pull it up to talk about it. Darn it. I hope my sound doesn't start kicking in with that ad here, but it's Flippa's insights, their data insights. And let me see if I can share it here, folks. If it starts making noise, I apologize. I'll cut it again. This is a page on their website. It's linked to from the home screen there, the homepage. So if you go to it, it's deal dash insights. And this is data from the search intent about the keywords that people are searching for over time on their website. And it gives you a lot of indication into deal flow and into what people are interested in. So what I say, with over 1 million searches a month, Flippa is the home of buyer demand. And so I filtered by last 30 days. This is interesting. And we can just talk about this for a couple of minutes here. Oh my goodness. Look at the highest total keyword search by volume by easily double anything else. And that's Shopify. So it really does give voice to the fact that e-commerce sales were up. I would think it was only like 15%. They still are up, and it's still such a dominating interest for people who are buying businesses.
I think that also ties into the story around agencies too, which was interesting to me, because I know there's been so much upheaval in the content site and affiliate site side of SEO, but I know on my client side of things, where I'm working with real companies doing SEO, and I know you've experienced this too with your agency, it's smooth sailing. It's literally nothing has changed. If anything, SEO has gotten easier to do in some cases because there's less competition. And it's like, you would talk to anyone in our space and there's all this change and upheaval and all this kind of stuff. Anyone who's got a real e-com business didn't just tack it on to their content site. They're like, update? What update? What's an HCU? No change, no difference. All the same strategies that worked all along continue to work because they're real businesses. And so it doesn't surprise me to see that there's a huge amount of interest in real businesses, which is, if you've got a Shopify store, you're selling something tangible. For real.
Yep, something tangible.
And then also agencies that serve those real businesses. That's still a fantastic play, because all the stuff we learned and applied to our own sites really doesn't work on our own sites anymore, but it works great on people's sites who have, a real e-com business.
So it drops off a cliff in terms of search volume after Shopify. But number 2, 3, 4, and 5, I think, are fascinating. Again, as it relates to everybody listening to this podcast, I'll say it in order of 2 through 5. Next most popular searches are around YouTube. Very closely related to that is app. Very close behind that is AI, and very close behind that is affiliate. And so I'll just highlight a couple of things. YouTube, we've talked about a lot on this podcast, referenced so many previous podcasts, episodes of the news. And certainly, Thomas, you've been sharing a lot about YouTube. And clearly, not only is deal volume up by 170% on YouTube, but it's also one of the most popular searches. Percentages can be a bit weird. If there were hardly any YouTube sales before, then going up 170% is intriguing, but not as intriguing. This is now not a percentage number. This is the second most searches on Flippa. Apps and AI at 3 and 4. That's super interesting. Apps are basically kind of SaaS. And so we know SaaS is popular, but very popular. AI, I see a lot of people creating AI solutions. And clearly people are looking for those and looking for those businesses. And then affiliate. And it's interesting because HCU has affected affiliates so much, but yet it's still the number 5 most searched term on Flippa, which is a buying platform.
I would really love, again, to kind of drill down and understand, okay, what makes a saleable YouTube channel? What makes a saleable app or AI service? Is it a channel that has 100,000 subscribers and it's all shorts and it gets a ton of traffic, but it's in some kind of niche where there's not necessarily a lot of value per customer? Is it weird channels like mine that have like no subscribers but get a decent amount of traffic and they're just like reviews of products that are super high value? I'm just curious because as somebody building channels, I'd like to know what the best strategy is. And same deal with apps, what kind of apps, what kind of AI? It really gets you thinking. But, it also makes you think, like I'm seeing some of the other topics that are much further down. Website is the last one on this chart, right? It's like, it's a fraction. So if you're building something with the intent of selling it, it needs to be SaaS. It needs to be, YouTube. Shopify, I think you could start that, but you have to really want to get into selling physical stuff, which is what most of Shopify is. So if you don't want to do that, if you want to do content, there's still a ton of opportunity, but it's not websites anymore. On Flippa, at least, it's YouTube, it's apps, it's AI services.
Well, it was a great event. Thank you, Flippa, for hosting it, for Ezoic, for being there. Met a lot of cool people. I did sit down afterwards with Steph from Flippa for a little bit, going to try to get her on the podcast, ask some of these questions, get into some of these nuances, because I'm with you. I want to get into the nuances and I want to talk about the specifics, especially as it relates to like the niche pursuits audience. I think that'd be a cool thing. So we'll see if we can put that together. Okay. Wow. That half hour flew by. We are already past time on the news section, which means we just have to go a little faster on side hustles.
Hey everyone, Spencer here, founder of Niche Pursuits. Are you adding a new internal link pointing to each article you publish? You should be. Ever find it time-consuming and a bit overwhelming? Remembering what content you publish and deciding which anchor text to use can be a real headache. What if there was a better way? Well, that's exactly why I created Link Whisper. Simply click Add Inbound Internal Links, and Link Whisper will scan your site in seconds and suggest the most relevant links with appropriate anchor text for your new article. Now simply check the box next to the internal links you want to add, and Link Whisper will add these links for you. No need to go into each article, edit, and add the link. It's already done. No more manual internal link building or guesswork. Just efficient, accurate linking that saves you time and improves your SEO. Transform your content strategy with Link Whisper. Start linking smarter, not harder. Use the coupon code podcast for $15 off. Head over to linkwhisper.com and use coupon code podcast to get $15 off.
I'll start give an update on the project you and I are working on. I'll start by saying this. For those of you listening, we're taking an old HCU hit site, a content site in the DIY space. It did have an email list. Can't remember what it was when we started, 11,000, 14,000, something in that range, sub 15,000, but 5 digits. And taking that email list and using that to generate traffic to the website and earn money on ads. Now, we started that project in November. So we're kind of coming into month 4 here. And January and February were a roller coaster. I'm going to try to keep it concise and let you kind of add some of the nuances to it. For starters, so we moved to Kit in January, and we were on Flowdesk, and we moved over to Kit. And yeah, it always takes a little bit of time. There wasn't any problems with it though. So we moved over to Kit. We found initially in the first week or two, deliverability was on point with what we were experiencing with Flowdesk. So that seemed to be a pretty smooth transition overall. We also in January and February have been starting Facebook arbitrage and ad arbitrage. We'll talk about that a little bit, but basically running ads on Facebook to the content and really isolating the most engaging articles and the highest RPM articles, the ones that in this case, Raptive has identified as paying the most RPMs so that you hopefully are able to offset your ad spend and then some, make money on the traffic you're sending, and then also use that to generate more email subscribers. So those are some of the things that we started in January and February. Now, it was an interesting month because we've had some good growth towards the end of January, early February, big drop off and then kind of made a couple changes, and then now are pretty much back to where we were in terms of revenue per day, albeit though with less traffic and higher RPMs due to some changes, where we were at the end of January. So we're back to kind of the daily highs that we were experiencing at the end of January. It has been a roller coaster though.
It has. Yeah. I think we were up. I mean, the end of January was great. We were up around $50, $60, $70 a day.
Yeah.
And then it really fell off a cliff in early February, as you kind of alluded to. We were down to maybe $25, $30 a day. Now we're back up in the 60, 70. I think we've been very bad scientists, I would say, because we changed a million variables at once. So it's been very hard to figure out the reasons. But let's break down a couple of the things we are kind of developing theories around. So one of them is that we had a great list going. It was mostly the legacy list, and we pared it down and really honed in on the content people liked. And we were publishing, I would say, kind of listicle style content in this DIY space at the end of January and doing really well. And of course, the thought was immediately, okay, how can we grow this list? Because you need more people on it. If you want to be sending daily emails and making more money, you need to grow the list. So in early February, we decided to experiment with some ways to use Facebook to get leads. And we found a way, again, with that, it relates to the arbitrage. It's kind of our secret. I don't think we're going to share the exact method, but we found a method that was getting us leads for about 20 cents each, which is really, really very good. Maybe even a little lower.
That's fully loaded after the arbitrage cost, but after also their earnings on the traffic. And so that ended up being like the fully loaded cost per lead.
Yeah. And it maybe sometimes even a little bit less, like 10 to 20 cents, let's say, for a lead, which is great. I mean, sometimes people are paying $3, $4 dollars a lead or something like that. And we really decided, okay, we've got this cool thing going. We're just going to go to town with it. And there were days in the early February timeframe where we were adding probably 200 to 400 leads a day, in some cases, to the list. And at the same time, we were targeting content that was maybe a little bit less engagement, lower RPM stuff. We also were troubleshooting some like site speed issues and other technical things. So a lot going on at once. So basically that's
right.
Yeah. It was like all that. Yeah. It was like so much. And then our revenue dropped. So we're trying to figure out, okay, what is happening with this? And one point of concern is, did we grow? We found this really great thing. We were getting leads that in small doses seemed to be very good quality, but we might have just spooked email providers by growing so quickly, like adding hundreds of new leads per day. I just wonder if that raised some kind of red flag, and maybe we just ended up in promotion boxes a bit more than normal.
Or some of that traffic might not have been as on point. It might have been the traffic that generated the lowest cost per lead, but as you expanded it and as the days and weeks went by that they were on the list, they weren't as engaged, maybe as one of the legacy persons who maybe was consistently engaged in this topic. And that's the difference. Like somebody who's engaged in the topic and willing to sign up for an email list from like a really interesting, exciting, fun Facebook post, but all of a sudden it's like, well, wait a second, I'm not sure I wanted to get stuff on this every day, And so they might have been a really good user. It might have been a really good person for the email, for the topic, but maybe not to be emailed every day about it.
Exactly. I think about, toasters, again, to not go into the niche specifically that we're doing here. If you really care about toasters and I write an article that's like, a review of a specific Black & Decker toaster oven, and you click and sign up for my newsletter, yes, like you said, you really care. You're going to want to hear a lot about toasters. If you landed on the page because I wrote an article, 10 things you didn't know about your toaster that could kill you, you click through, oh my God, and then you read that and you went, oh, okay, all right, now I know. I don't really care about toasters. You just really spooked me and I wanted to know what was going on. You're not going to want to hear about toasters on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's our challenge. Is it a deliverability issue? Do we risk by using the strategy we found? Do we risk the overall list? Or is it just, volume? We have more people. They're not quite as on point. The content is a little, more on the your toaster may kill you side of things than the toaster review side of things. And we're just going to have to live with a lower RPM as we scale. And maybe that just means, it's going to take some time for our original strategy to catch up. What we've done in the meanwhile is to kind of go back to basics, go back to the list that we had before we started really scaling, and then kind of slowly, like you said, add back in the leads we've been getting. And also the other thing we've leaned into, which is really interesting, we originally started this Facebook arbitrage approach just as part of our lead gen strategy, adding to the list. What we discovered is that by experimenting with Facebook arbitrage, which again is you pay X amount per click for your Facebook clicks, and you earn more than that from your premium ad network. So maybe you pay 3-4 cents a click, and then you earn 6 or 7 cents per click from your network. Then you're making a profit. We originally intended for that just to drive our lead gen strategy. It turns out some of these things we discovered in terms of posts are actually so good and so engaging and profitable that we're actually making a good amount on each click independently of any kind of newsletter and lead gen. So that's another thing we've done, is just lean into the Facebook arbitrage that's working. And, RPMs are really bad in the beginning of February. I think naturally they've come up more. We've learned more which pages have better RPMs. We've prioritized those. And so now it's like we kind of have this two-pronged approach going forward. We have the email that we were doing before. We're not quite sure how to grow that list without, nuking our deliverability and taking some risk there. But we also have completely by accident discovered this potentially very scalable, very profitable Facebook arbitrage strategy.
It goes back to that debate, which we won't have today because it's hard to have that debate quickly. But like, if you are going to pull more than one lever at a time in an effort to scale faster, doesn't necessarily mean you're trying to scale fast, quote unquote, but just faster, right? Like if you're going to try more than one thing at a time, give yourself the ability to scale faster, but then it's much harder to diagnose what's working, what's not working, and things that happen. So that's kind of you and I have opted like, hey, let's go as quickly as we feel comfortable with here. And then, we had a hard time diagnosing and still are diagnosing, but it's up and to the right for now. Good last couple of weeks. A lot of back and forth to try to figure things out. We'll keep you guys posted. Heck, kind of getting to share and learn on the fly here as we go. But let's move over to yours. Well, I'll try to give an update. It is the end of the month. It's we're recording on February 27th. Tomorrow's the 28th, so we're right at the end of the month. But I'll save and give some updates on January and February numbers in terms of money, earnings, those sorts of things in a future podcast update. But let's turn over to you. You've got some side hustle updates on your side.
So yeah, I decided to update and basically, instead of starting something new, which I'm always tempted to do, to basically revise and kind of rebrand and repivot something I've been working on for a while. So I have a newsletter. It was originally called No Frills Influencer. I started it actually around the time I came on this podcast years ago now to speak about Amazon Influencer. But I grew it primarily through my Medium presence. And so at the end of most of my Medium articles, I would put this call to action to sign up for the newsletter. I have a really solid lead magnet on that. It's a list of basically the ChatGPT prompts that I've actually found useful as a creator, like the ones that I use on a day-to-day basis. And I put them all in a document, and I put that out there as a lead magnet. And I put that at the end of each of my Medium stories. And that was literally the only growth strategy on this list. And so over time, it just picked up more and more and more subscribers. And it crossed at the beginning of this year the 3,000 subscriber mark. Again, all organic, mostly coming from Medium. And I realized the No Frills Influencer really wasn't the list anymore. It was really AI focused, because that's what I write about on Medium. And that's what my lead magnet was. And so when I'd publish about making money online and influencers, people were okay with it. But what they seemed to really want was AI content. Not AI written content, but content about AI. So I decided to pivot the list. Yeah, it's important. It was important to mention that. It is me. I am writing it. I decided to pivot the list. I rebranded it as AI in Real Life. The focus now is not so much on the earning money online. It still talks about content creation and that kind of stuff, but it's really about using AI to do real world stuff, not kind of the pie in the sky. Like, this might change industries 10 years down the line, but what can you do with it now? What can you do to earn money with it now, to create content, to automate, to move faster in a business? And I've done a ton of that. I've been doing it for a decade now or more. This is my background, so I can talk about it. And it was what I was talking about to this audience. So I pivoted in that direction. The list is now focused on AI content about AI, teaching you how to do this kind of stuff that I was writing about on Medium. I also moved the list from Kit, which is where I was before, over to Beehive, which is a really interesting platform. I partially just wanted to try it out. Mm-hmm. It's much more kind of writing focused, I would say, than marketing focused. So Kit is fantastic for automations where you want all different segments. We talked about this a little bit, target this person with that thing, etc. Beehive is much more oriented towards you have an audience and you want to just write in a beautiful interface and you send out an all text email to them. They care about you as a person or as a creator, and they want to connect with you. And the other thing that appealed to me about Beehive is that they have built-in monetization opportunities within the platform itself. So Kit is really oriented towards selling a product, selling an info product, moving people to a website to monetize. Beehive, I think their target customer is that writer who wants to make money from their very intelligent and useful information, but doesn't necessarily want to deal with a premium ad network and building a WordPress site. It's sort of more like a Substack type of approach. And so I moved the list over there, and they have these ads that you can qualify for and put into your messages, where it's essentially like a sponsor that they find for you and target to your specific list. There's a ton of them in the AI space. A lot of them are really good, and they pay a decent amount. So it's somewhere, over $1 per click on these opportunities when you qualify for them. So my goal is to do at least once a week, hopefully even more, kind of AI practical things, sharing videos that I've recorded about how to do this, sharing articles I've written, some kind of AI news and changes in the industry type of content, keeping people up to date on it. And I'm hoping to monetize through the native things on Beehive. So I don't necessarily have to be reviewing products and pushing affiliate links and all that kind of stuff. I also had a domain that I hadn't been using, so I pointed it to it. It is aiautomate.com. So AI automate it, all one word. And the idea is use AI to automate it, whether that's your business, your content creation. That's going to be kind of the big focus. So yeah, that's my pivot. That's my updated side hustle there. And yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes.
It ties in nicely to what you're doing with Medium, what you share on Medium. You talk a lot about AI. You've built up a following on Medium, a very healthy following on Medium around this. And so it kind of seems to be very part and parcel with what you're doing. I think I would be curious someday to talk on this podcast. Maybe you can share. I don't know if you have any experience with Substack, but the differences between Substack and Beehive, because I've always, we did a big breakdown on Weekend Growth between Beehive, MailerLite, and ConvertKit, now Kit. And you're exactly right. Kit was all about automations. It excels at automation sequences. MailerLite actually has a lot, often regarded as like the cheaper brand, the more inexpensive one, but actually has a lot of great functionality as well. Beehive was always that recommendation we found for kind of a personal brand, right? Where you're not, it's blast style. It's like every day or once a week, wherever you're sitting down, you're writing an email and it's going out to the whole audience. It's not about getting an automated sequence necessarily. It's about a blast style personal approach. So I know that's a lot of what Substack does as well. So I'd be curious to hear your feedback on Beehive as you progress.
I think to me, it feels like a bit of a healthy medium between Substack and Kit, in the sense that Substack, I feel like, is really oriented towards subscribers. You're a journalist and you really don't care at all about the tech side of newsletters. And you've got a bunch of people who are willing to pay $5 a month to read your writing. And that seems to me to be the use case for Substack. I don't want to charge for this list. I want it to be free. I don't want to monetize it with affiliates because it just moves too fast. There's people who do a great job of that. I would like to push my people towards them and get paid to do it rather than doing those reviews and affiliate things myself, because you really have to do it full time. The AI stuff moves too quickly to dip your toe in occasionally. And so, yeah, I think of this as being sort of like Substack, but not really requiring that subscriber mentality, the paid subscriber, because again, they are finding those sponsorship opportunities for you. And I'm just running the numbers. I've got 3,000 people in there. I don't know what % are going to click through on an ad necessarily. But if I send one email and I get even 20, 30 people clicking on one of these ads, yeah, it's 20, 30 bucks an email. If I do that a couple times a week, which is very reasonable to do, then, this could be a viable way to monetize in the long term.
Well, we'll be following along, of course. I don't know whether to call you the newsletter guy, the Medium guy, the YouTube guy. Time will tell. Let's talk about weird niches. So going back to the event I was at last night, the Flippa event, I got my weird niche from the Flippa event. It's funny because shout out to Gavin from Ezoic, who introduced himself prior to the event starting and said, hey, I'm a listener of the podcast, also work at Ezoic. And he walked up to me after the presentation. He was like, hey, that URL that got shared, is that would make a good weird niche for the podcast. And I was like, I already wrote it down. So he was thinking the same thing. The weird niche that we're going to talk about today, which was shared last night, so I've got some cool data on it, is, let me bring it up on the screen. It is typingtest.com. Now, this is a website that's been around for a while. So it's not like a new one. It's certainly been around, I think it's 25 years. I'll have that data here in a second. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a way to check your typing skills. A lot of typing is based on like words per minute. So you can test that. Now, Spencer and I had a typing test, a different one on the podcast in the weird niche section a while back. It wasn't this one. But it's funny because, there's more than one here. It's a very popular thing to do. This is expanded beyond just, typing test. It's now, as you can see in the sidebar, typing practice, typing lessons, benchmark. They have a certification program I'll talk about here in a second. There's games. There's a challenge. It's littered with ads. You got a above the fold kind of banner before the content even starts. You've got a big one on the right sidebar. You've got a big one at the bottom of the page. There's not much to this, so it shows, and then you've got a sticky video ad. So it's really loaded up with ads. I will share the Ahrefs for this, and you can see that it's a DR71. Hold on. Let me bring that up here. While I bring it up, it's a DR71. It has, had that time to age and get all those backlinks. It's interesting, though, because... Oh man, I cannot get this share. There we go. It's interesting because Ahrefs is estimating 3.7 million organic visits per month on only 20,000 keywords. Like, that is an insane amount of traffic for only what amounts to 20,000 keywords. Typing test, which they rank number 1 for, get this volume. Oh my goodness. It is 409,000 searches per month, estimated by Ahrefs. Now, here's where it gets a little bit interesting is if you go look at some of the data that got shared last night, and that's what I'll kind of discuss right now. It was just sold recently, and Flippa was the one that had the transaction. And so the data that they shared last night about it was really cool. So 25-year-old website, as I mentioned. It was started by someone in Finland. It gets 3.2 monthly users, okay? And so Ahrefs is not that far off. And again, what Flippa reported was monthly users, whereas I believe Ahrefs is traffic-based. So they actually could be very similar. So a lot of times, people compare the two and wonder how close they are. Here we have some actual data that was getting 3.2 million monthly users. Revenue per year, $550,000. I can't imagine there's a ton of cost month over month. I'm sure there's some maintenance costs, obviously server loads at that kind of traffic, but $550,000 a year in revenue. And it's sold for $2.5 million on Flippa. Nice. And it was bought, I know, it was bought by Sporkle, which is another brand we could, spend time talking about and stuff. So $2.5 million.
That's amazing. I mean, it's one of those sites that's a perfect example of it does what it says on the tin. Right, it is typingtest.com. It is a typing test. It ranks for every variant of typing test, and that's all it has to do because there's so much volume. I mean, we're looking at, if you didn't see it on the screen, 400,000 volume, search volume for just typing test. But then there's words per minute test, type test, how fast can I type? There's so many variations, and all it does is that, and that's all it needs to do to make that's, $550,000 a year. That's not even that big of a multiple. Ultimately, no. I guess it's pretty good, but $2.5 million. That is awesome.
It's a good size multiple, no doubt. And I don't, like, does this fall under like going back to the Flippa categorization? Like, does this fall under website, or is this kind of? It's not a SaaS, but is it like a tool? Is it an app? It's not really an app. Like when you're searching for this in Flippa, like what are you looking for? And it's also one of those things where my first thought was, well, I can't share this in the weird niche section. It's making $2.5 million, or it was bought for $2.5 million, it's making $500,000 a year. But it is still just a weird niche. Like it's just a single topic, right? Like it's like, typing tests. Like I'll make a site about that. And obviously the fact that it's 25 years old and the fact that it has that staying power has been why it's done so well. But man, going back to it, like what a cool story. What an insane amount of money to get per year, but then also to sell a site that is, a pretty simple concept.
I just imagine the owner of this in Finland sitting around in his mansion or her mansion, I'm not sure, driving, the Lamborghini, and someone says, "How did you make your money?" "Well, I built this one-page website that tests people's typing speed." I mean, it really shows you can't judge a book by its cover, right? You don't look at that site and think, that's a $2.5 million website. Yep. But there you go. I mean, if you build the right thing at the right time and you hang on to it for a long while, you never know with a site that you're looking at.
Even to your point, it's like, I can see somebody at the party be like, "Where'd you get all your money?" You're like, "I built a website and sold it." It's like, what? You got all this from a website? The website, I mean, it must be like a website like I go to all the time. It's like, it's typingtest.com. No, you probably have never been It's like, oh my gosh, the world we live
there's
in.
Still opportunity out there. I think it's different than you would expect it to be. But
ever changing. All right, I'm pulling yours up.
Yeah, so mine is definitely not that, but it is probably more in the traditional sort of weird niche type of space. This is probably one that would potentially be in the app side of the Flippa sales, though. This is a site it's brickfact.com, and it is all about different Lego sets. So I discovered this one, as I do most of my weird niche sites, by accident, looking up. I've been building my YouTube channel around dad reviews, and I reviewed some Lego sets that my kids had, and they turned out to be ones that had been sitting in the closet for a while. They weren't on sale anymore. It's hard to find even where we had gotten them. And this site sells and links to sales for sort of more obscure, maybe discontinued Lego sets and that kind of thing, probably an affiliate play, but they also have information about all different Lego sets. And Lego, there's all different tie-ins to different brands, and there's superheroes and there's Star Wars and all that kind of stuff. And there's specific kind of things people can look up. Like each Lego set has a number. So the site has broken them down and gone into, okay, you want Marvel superheroes, you want the Infinity Gauntlet, here it is. And it tells you the basic information about it. It weighs this much. These are the dimensions. This is how much it sells for. And that's pretty much it. And then it links out, and you can get a sense for how they're monetizing from their affiliate disclosure, Amazon Partner Program, eBay Partner Network, and then other retailers like Lego. So they're linking out to a bunch of places to kind of track down these obscure, maybe not on sale anymore, Lego sets. And people are very passionate about Lego, and they're very passionate about some of these sub-brands. If you're a Marvel person, you're going to want all the Marvel stuff. And you probably are looking for that obscure Lego set that was released a long time ago. And if you're a Lego person, you're looking for the crazy one that's no longer available in the store. That's 5,000 pieces and it's going to take you a year to put together. And so this site caters to that. There's also other features. There's an app associated with it. There's an ability to add the sets that you have and track those and share those. It doesn't get a ton of traffic. It's a DR34. It's about 37,000 organic traffic. So not, anything huge. It's down a bit, actually, since I checked. It's like 30,000 organics now. Most of it is about the keywords are, specific Lego sets. But I think it's really interesting because you're getting that collector interest. You're getting rare Lego pieces or some of the things we're seeing. We're seeing literally the numbers. Like I mentioned, each Lego has a identifying number. So Lego piece 32557, apparently very much in demand.
Look at the volume.
Yeah, there's a meme associated. I don't know what the piece is. I'm a little afraid to click actually on a family-friendly podcast, but There's obviously a lot of interest around this, and they're capitalizing on that. And while they don't get a ton of traffic, they have an app. They have a lot of good affiliate links on there. I've got to imagine they're probably doing pretty well with this.
It's interesting because we were looking at those keywords. A lot of their keywords ranked in spots like 7, 8, 9. And Guy, if they could get those into the top 3, like their traffic, as we know just from doing SEO, like the amount of traffic you get at spot 8 versus the traffic you get at, say, spot 3 is, 5x, right? 4x. So you feel like, boy, they're close. They're sitting on even more of a gold mine. Like if they could just move some of those things up. I didn't look at the competition. Maybe it'd be very difficult. But to your point, they do have a number of keywords they rank for, and there's a lot of search volume around some of this stuff. You would not expect that.
If Legos, people spend a lot of money on Legos. They're pricey. People like them. It appeals to kids. Also, there's a whole adult, Lego community. People put together these very complex plants and flowers and, really cool stuff. And I can see how there's a lot of demand around it. I feel like they need a content play. This is a site where they've got the e-com side, the sales side. They have a real app kind of locked down. If they really leaned into more of the content and writing about different Lego pieces and listicles of, the top 10 rare Marvel Lego sets and that kind of stuff, I really feel like they could even bring in a lot more traffic, to your point.
I'm on the About page, just, really quickly, kind of an interesting story. They're based out of Cyprus, but they have people that, they're a mixed team spread all over the globe. So it looks like it's more than one person. It was just started in 2021, March 2021. We noticed that many in the community have the same problem. It's complicated to manage your own Lego collection. First prototype was July 2021. They didn't release until February 2022. So this is pretty new. This is, mine was 25 years old. This is like 3 years old this month.
And I think they really started with a different emphasis. The app that was really for you have these Legos and you just want a way to share them with your friends and track what you've got and for your collection.
Yeah.
They probably stumbled into this very lucrative affiliate side. I don't think they've even gone as far as the content side, but hey, if they did that, I think that's the logical next step, because they're moving from track your own stuff to buying stuff to just a general Lego info site.
Good find. And that does bring us to a wrap here on This Week in the News. I mean, what a cool week in the news. A lot of, different topics. And I think that, some of the topics we talked about today are going to be brought up again in the future. Obviously, some great information on getting your content in not AI overviews, sorry, in AI search engines. We then talked about the lawsuit against Google for AI overviews and related AI content. A little bit of insight on deal flow and maybe spark some interest for people in terms of projects they're working on, giving them a little push to get those to the point where they might be able to sell them. So anyways, cool week, fun week. It flew by as always. Thomas, thanks for being here. If you're listening, enjoy your weekend, and we will see you again next week. Same time, same place.